Joining me now is Forbes senior editor, Dan Alexander. Dan, thanks for coming on.
Hey, thanks for having me.
You recently reported that a state-owned bank in China paid Donald Trump millions while he was president. You wrote that the Trumps, quote, portrayed the agreement as a standard business transaction. Is this true?
It looks like it started as a standard business transaction. This lease agreement began before Donald Trump became a candidate for president. But of course, when he decided to keep his business, when he stepped into the White House, that brought all of these additional questions and potential conflicts to what had been just a standard family real estate shop. So all of a sudden in Trump Tower, you have the Industrial and Commercial Bank of China, which is about 70% owned by the government of China, leasing space just a few floors below the Trump organization and paying rent to the President of the United States. The interesting thing here is that in 2018, ICBC, the bank, leased a much larger space on 6th Avenue, a few blocks away, than it had at Trump Tower. So you might have expected, given that its lease was going to expire in 2019, that ICBC would be departing Trump Tower relatively soon after that. But they didn't leave. Instead, they stayed. And that raised some questions about why they were staying. Were they doing it to curry favor or potentially avoid further angering a president with whom China was already fighting with over issues that were much more substantial than a couple $1 million lease in an office building? Then you had, right after Donald Trump leaves office, it appears that ICBC then bails out of Trump Tower, even though it looks like they had signed a 5-year extension to stay. So they both stayed under questionable circumstances and then left under questionable circumstances, all of which raises the question of whether something that began as a standard business deal ultimately evolved into something that had geopolitics in mind and, huge potential conflicts of interest for the former president.
Dan, let's break this down. A president and his family essentially profiting off a deal with a foreign government raises a lot of questions, ethical and legal. My first question, is this legal?
Depends on who you ask. For starters, I want to be clear about something. So Donald Trump kept his business when he moved into the White House, and Trump Tower Commercial LLC, the entity that was accepting payments from this state-owned bank in China, continued to be 100% owned by Donald Trump. So it's not a typical corporation with a lot of shareholders, nor is it a real estate partnership with a bunch of different people. It's not even really a family business. Although his family members are running it for him, they don't own a piece of that yet. It's just Trump who's getting the rent. The emoluments clause of the Constitution prohibits presidents and other office holders from accepting lots of different things from foreign countries. And when Trump became president and was accepting payments, including money through this lease with a state-owned bank from China, it raised the question of whether he was violating the Constitution of the United States. A bunch of different groups sued, saying that he was. Donald Trump delayed, punted, and tried to get those cases dismissed and pushed back further. And then ultimately, after 4 years, as you know, the legal system moves slowly, the point basically became moot when he was voted out of office. So we don't really have a conclusive answer about whether or not that was legal. But certainly some people believe it was not legal, and the Trump organization would argue that it was.